Okay, we're going to get started. Just want to welcome those that are here virtually as well as face to face. And I was just going to, we've got refreshments here for anybody that's here that would like to sign up. I was just going to quickly introduce the officers so you know who might be at your school that you could make contacts with. This year, the co-presidents are Dawn Simpson, she's at Down East Middle School, and me, I'm retired. So, and then we've got President-elect Young Author co-chairs are Amanda McCall at Morehead City Primary School and Tiffany Mayo at West Carteret High School. And our Young Author committees, we've already got people signing up to try to help. So right now we've got Amy Lee at Woes and Angela Scrayback at MES. And we've got, me and Deborah Burton are also going to help with that committee. Vice President of Membership is Narda Megason, and she's at Morehead City Middle School. Our secretary is Mary Barber, and she is at St. Egbert Catholic School. And our treasurer is Deborah Burton. She is retired and being shadowed by Elaine Hughes at Newport Middle School. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And we have our digital media director, which is Emily Golightly at Newport Elementary School. And she's also serving as our past president. Emily will be, and she's at Newport Elementary School. So today, we're going to get started. We've got two presentations, one with young authors and the other with Global ReadAloud. So we're going to get started with the young authors. And this is Amanda McCall and Tiffany Mayo.
Tiffany's over here. She's got a headache, so I'll do most of the talking. Can they hear okay?
I think so.
Okay.
Guys, can you give a thumbs up if you can hear us okay? Can you hear them?
We're going to go with it and hope so.
Mary, can you hear us? Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we're trying something a bit different for the young authors presentation this year. Last year we did a slideshow, which we liked, but we saw another council did kind of like a newsletter. So we're gonna try it out. Let's see how this works. So anybody who is at the meeting, we're collecting your email addresses so we can make sure that we can send this to you because it does have hyperlinks in it. And we want to make sure that you all get access to that. So the theme for young authors this year is engineering literacy, creating readers for life. I'm excited about it because as a media coordinator, I do a lot with STEM and things like that in my building. And so for me, I feel like there's a lot to do here. I definitely feel like it would be a lot easier for the older kids. So I think if you're at an older building or if you've got middle schoolers and high schoolers, this would be a great opportunity. But thinking about it could be about the impact of a special experience or a moment or a person in your life and how that has impacted how you choose to kind of engineer your future. So it isn't as technical as it sounds, and we're going to give you some ideas here in a minute. As always, if your students choose to write, they can write prose, poetry, fiction, or nonfiction. Can you click on that writing prompts and ideas?
Sure.
All right, so this is just a list that has been brainstormed of different ideas that you might present to kids. It's kind of a brainstorming way for things that might get them started, because I know that sometimes it's hard to think of what to do with a topic like this, and it's so broad sometimes that it almost makes it more difficult. But this is an example of things that you could do, whether it's designing your own vacation, designing your future, creating code, thinking about an engineer who has kind of made a big difference in the world, or has made even a big differences to a person in particular, and how you could write about that, writing a letter to your future self. So it's really focused on the future and how we can kind of build towards that. This is certainly not the only things you can write about. This is just a list that gives kind of ideas. At the bottom, there are quotes that kind of pertain to the future. And so it would be kind of an opportunity for kids to take one of those quotes and kind of write about how that has impacted them, or what experience in their life they can relate that to. Okay, so those are there for you. You click on that next thing right below it. Mm-hmm. So being a librarian, I'm all about books. And so these are a number of books that would tie into this theme. Some are more like picture books, which work for any age kid, but there's also ones, I think there's about 3 or 4 pages of books here. that could be offered as a read aloud or to kind of get those brains thinking, to get them geared towards what this topic is. Some are fiction, some are nonfiction. I know if you scroll down just a bit, there's some more kind of geared towards our older kiddos. Yeah, there we go. So like The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, there's also an elementary version of that. So that would be a great example of ways to kind of tie in literature. Just, I thought that the list of, and I didn't even add all of them that I saw, this was a lot of them, but definitely a great way to tie in this and connect it to our theme. So that list is there. All right. This next section is the forms that you are going to need. So these are links that you can click. It'll take you right to the form. So the first one is a young authors writing entry form. If you've done the young authors writing program before, it is the same. The only thing that is different is that about halfway down, we have a place for teacher's name and email. And we added that because sometimes the person who submits the writing is not the actual teacher. And especially if you have an elementary kiddo who maybe doesn't check their email as often, we needed to have another contact for that child. So that way they were told about, you know, especially if they're a winner on the local level or at the state level. So we just asked that when this form is turned in for the young authors, that it is completed. It must be completed. That bottom where it says check yes or no, we need that for photo permission, because if they are a state winner, like last year's, they had these, they might be put in a book such as this. And so we need to make sure that they are given permission to be placed in a book, either at the local level or state level. So that's one form. The form right below it is the cover design entry form. So a few years ago, the North Carolina Reading Association opened this up to not only our writers, but also our artists. And so this is if a student would like to submit a piece of art that will go for the cover art. They decide at the state level who the winner is. So like that was what winner for last year, but there are also opportunities for kind of, I guess you could say runner-ups, I guess, for students to be selected to be put in other parts of the book as well. So it's a great way for those kids who may be like, well, I can think of stuff to do. I don't know what to write about. And if they have a really good skill with art, then that might be a good way to do that. I'm going to add a little bit more onto that in just a few minutes, but that's the art form. Below, I've explained some about the Google Drive. So when your student, if you have a student who has completed a piece of writing or a piece of art and you filled out this form, those are the two pieces you as the teacher or member need. So you need their work and you need these forms that are completed. Once those are completed, you are going to upload them to the Google Drive. And we have added every school's Google Drive to this document. So Emily, if you'll just click on one of them. So let's say you are at Beaufort Middle School. It'll take you right to the drive that you need to add it. So this will be the folder that you would add it at. I'll talk about how you're going to file that there. If you have any questions, I'm kind of not going through every single detail of this because I know that we can all read. But the one important thing we want is it needs to be labeled appropriately because it makes Tiffany and my job much easier. Otherwise, we have to go back and fix them all. And that's a lot when you have like 150 entries. So we gave an example there, but like for that fifth grader, it would be this school year _ last name, first name, Kate D. Camilla. Can you tell who I like? _ and then Crystal Coast Reading Council. We want you to spell out the whole Crystal Coast Reading Council because there are other reading councils that have the same initials, CCRC. And so that again makes our job easier when we submit to state. So those are all there. Below that, I put the writing guidelines. These are just important. These are really important for you to know because it tells you the font size. So that it has to be Times New Roman, 10-point font. It tells you about the title, which has to be 12-point, underlined, typed in bold, and you will not believe how many people do not follow these guidelines. And again, if they don't, Ms. Mayo and I have gone back and very generously fixed a lot of papers for people. But I'm going to be honest, if we get COVID during this time, then that might not happen. So they just might not get entered. So we really, really ask that you as a teacher, I mean, even if the student doesn't do it, you could always go back and help them with this part, make sure that this part is followed kind of down to a T, because that would really help us out. So all of that information is there for you to come back to refer to. At the bottom, it tells you your word limit. Please, please, please pay attention to this. I'll be honest, I am not going to go through and count how many words are in each document. But if it gets put on, if we can tell that it's supposed to be 200 words and it's 500, I mean, we're not going to be able to put that one through. So just be really cognizant of your word limits and make sure that your kiddos are aware of that. We would hate for them to put in a lot of work and then it end up not getting submitted just because of the word count. So please make sure that that is shared with them. And finally, at the very bottom of this chart is just a number of our members. So however many members we have is the number of entries that we can turn in. We're shooting for 76. That's the number. We would love to have more than that, but 76 will allow us to submit 30. I think that's what we did last year because we were able to use our numbers prior for the year before. So if you're here and you know there's maybe a colleague who is interested in doing this but wasn't able to make the meeting today, are we recording this meeting?
Yes.
Okay, we're recording this. And so we would love to be able to send this out to people who sign up. I think we could do that. Could we send this out to those people who sign up? Okay. So please, 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 you can sign. I know like Emily has signed up, like her husband, and both her kids. So she has signed up her whole family. So we just really, anything you can think, it doesn't have to be a teacher. It could be a community member. But if you think there's somebody really passionate about building this program and allowing kids to write, this would be a great thing for them to do. I always hit up like my PE teachers and my art teachers because we can still, my PE teacher's over here in the corner cutting out stuff for us, but like we can submit stuff 5 entries under her name. So, and it gets them CEU credits for everything they're at. So that's awesome too. Okay, so those are the guidelines. If I missed something.
Do you want to talk about council choice?
Oh, so we will get to each pick. We pick 2 council choice winners for the writing, not for the art. The art does not have a council choice unless that's changed. But I don't think it has this year. So 2 council choice is basically they just go straight through to state and they end up getting placed in the state book. Maybe from students who worked really hard on a piece of writing and maybe they just weren't quite up to what we would typically pick, but we know that student is coming from perhaps a bad situation or maybe they're an English language learner. And so this gives the opportunity for us to kind of put those 2 kiddos. So this might be like that one thing that kind of pushes them into really working towards something positive and getting recognized and getting awarded, that kind of thing. If you have a student who you feel like is like that and you submit their writing, please, shoot one of us an email or put a sticky note on it if it's something that you send through the pouch, something to kind of let us know, hey, this kid would really be a good one for council's choice, and this is kind of the situation. Because especially if you're not at judging, it's hard for us to know if they're from a different school. So if you're not at judging and really feel like there's a kid who's really worked hard and this really do them good, and please let us know that. Myself or Tiffany Mayo, our contacts are on the newsletter, and we will definitely do what we can when we're in judging. Go out of this for right now because the art, I'm gonna talk about in a minute.
Okay.
Please. Okay.
Do you want to look at the rubric?
The writing rubric is attached. This is the same writing rubric that is used during judging. So if you want to know, if the kiddos want to know, what are they going to be looking at, this is it. This is exactly how it's judged upon. Now, I will say we've got a variety of judges typically. So you've got judges that are elementary, you've got judges that are middle school level, you've got judges that are high school level. And I will say that in the past we come in with very different expectations. So just know that. But this is what we all use to grade them upon. And each piece of writing is judged 2 times. And so for example, if Emily Golightly scored one at 27, that's probably too high, at 18. And if I scored one at 19, those would be the 2 scores at stake. If it has a bigger difference than 2, we would have a 3rd judge score, and then we would take whatever the closest 2 are. So there are 2 different people do look at it, and we try to make it as fair and equitable as possible with that. All right, the cover art guidelines are attached. The design criteria is right here. They're also probably on the other sheet that we just looked at, but this is the more specific. Must be drawn by hand or with computer tools, no photographs, stock photos or graphics. A appropriate content, of course. They're really big about leaving a 1-inch border on all sides of the paper because, again, if it gets chosen for a book, we need it to have that area where it can be binded, and we don't want that to interrupt the illustration or the picture. Again, the artwork has to be sponsored by a member. So if you're not a member of NCRA and you don't know somebody who's a member who can submit, then then it can't be submitted. So it's easiest, to be honest, if you just become a member and then you can submit a piece of art and writing. But if that's not the case, then you hopefully you know somebody and you can reach out. The art scoring rubric is attached. I'm going to be honest with you. We are not art teachers. So we don't necessarily, in the past, we have not judged the artwork. We did get a lot of art in last year. So depending on how many come in this year, we may have to kind of start looking at this. If not, we just pick a handful that we think would be the strongest and we send those to state. They don't all go to state, but we do kind of pick ones that we think meet that good and excellent quality, and we send those and let kind of those people up at the state level make that decision as to which ones qualify.
That's why we need art teachers to be members too.
Right. New this year, I tried to put that in bold. Ms. Mayo and I were talking about this today. So this is the only year that they've done this, and I have a feeling that'll be probably the only year this is going to happen. Students can physically build or create for this year's art contest, since it goes with a theme. So for example, maybe they build a structure out of Legos. I don't know. The only requirements are the permission slip, which we talked about earlier, and a picture of what they created and a title of what they created. So the permission slip and a picture as a JPEG. This is the only year this has happened, so I can't tell you a whole lot more as to what they're looking for or how. But if you just, I know being in the media center, we do a lot with STEM in here, and I know I could think of some kids off the top of my head. That's just how their brain works. And they can build things that I would never be able to do. So that is kind of an interesting way to kind of look at it this year. I think that opens up the door for even more kids than maybe in the past.
Well, would they turn in a photograph of it?
A photo.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So for physical art pieces must be sent. So as far as we know, we would like for the actual piece of art, once it's completed, as well as a permission slip, to come to either Tiffany Mayo or Amanda McCall. You could either pouch it to us or email, however we want to get it. And we would like a digital copy to be uploaded to the folder, that same folder we were talking about. If you're a Morehead City primary teacher, please upload it to that folder. I don't think we need a separate one, because I'd rather know what school they came from. Yeah, upload it to whatever school that kiddo is from, because we will be in those folders and we'll know if it's art or whatnot. But we would like to have the physical piece. Now, if it's a structure, obviously we can't have the physical structure, but just that image, that photo is fine. But we would like those in both places, because the more places things are, the less likely we are to lose them. These are 3 images that made it to the state book last year. So one from an elementary, one from a primary, and one from a middle schooler from last year. These are 2 things that if you maybe aren't as tech savvy and you're not sure how to upload something to the drive, if you click that button, there was a Loom video with me talking you through it. We are not going to watch that because I don't want to hear myself, but that is there telling you what to click and those type of things. The next is a YouTube video discussing how to scan a document. So if you're like, oh, my person painted this beautiful picture and I don't know how am I supposed to do a digital? This kind of talks you through how you can scan it with either an iPhone. Of course, you can use copiers to scan it in. If that works better, you can do that. But there's that for you as well. All right, and so I kind of just took all like the big stuff and put it here at the bottom. I put the length of the entries that we already talked about, but that's really important. I put the formatting down here, so kind of what you really need to know as far as what the kids' final product should look like, and how it should be listed at the bottom as far as their first name, last name, grade, that type of thing. And and towards the bottom, our due date, really important, Friday, October 29th in the shared drive. All of them need to be submitted that date by then, because we are judging, I believe, the following week, if I remember correctly. I actually bumped this date back a week. They had it a week earlier, and I'm actually giving y'all an extra week. But so Friday, October 29th, that's the date that the items need to be uploaded into the drive. Are the permission form and the written piece there? Have you followed all the formatting? Join the Crystal Coast Reading Council, because only members can do that. And I put a link to, if you click on that, click here, it'll take you to our registration link, I believe. And then 5 or fewer pieces of writing you can submit. Did we put a limit on the art this year or no?
I think we shouldn't this year, but probably in the next years.
So we're not limiting.
We should have last year because it was lighthouses.
Yes.
So, but this year I think there'll be less.
Okay.
art.
And it's the same deadline for writing.
Yes.
Yes, writing.
What I read October 30th.
You did, because I was trying to fix something real quick, and I'll fix it.
Okay, all right. That's
Yes,
what I
good
was-
question. I need to fix it. So it is Friday, October 29th for writing and art. And I think somewhere else I had the 30th. It's the 29th. I just was in a hurry trying to fix something. The same student can submit writing and art, so they are allowed to do both. That is totally fine. We are not limiting the number of pieces of art that can come through, but each student can only submit 1 piece of art and 1 piece of writing. But they can't submit 3 or 4 pictures, for example. I put kind of our contacts down below there. I put our Instagram, Facebook, website for Crystal Coast Reading Council. Tiffany Mayo and my contacts are at the very bottom. We'll do our best. We're both media specialists. She's the high school level, I'm the primary level. We'll do our best to get back with you. And if we don't know an answer, we'll be happy to try to find out the answer. But we're hoping for a great turnout this year. It's an interesting topic. I think our middle schoolers and high schoolers can really do a lot with it. And we tend to not have as many of those. So I'm really hoping that if we have anybody here that's that level, maybe you can kind of help us push that some as much as you can. Are there any questions? I went through that.
Can
really fast.
students submit artwork and a construction project?
No, from what I understand, that's just considered 1 piece of art. Good question.
Now, the other thing that causes us a little bit of issue that Amanda, I think, said, but I'm going to reiterate, is we know you have to scan the document that has the parent's signature on it. That's fine if that one's a PDF. We don't care about that. But we can't have the actual writing be a PDF, because when we go back and edit it, we can't, it's troublesome to edit a PDF.
We have to retype it. We have to retype the whole thing.
150 times.
Yes.
So when you make sure when you put the writing in the folder that it's a Google Doc that we can, because it gives us access to edit that, just in case we do find spelling errors or spaces or bold issues or whatever, we go back
Font
and check
size.
font size. We check every single one of those before they go to the state. But it helps us if those are as a Google Doc rather than a PDF.
Yes, last year Tiffany and I went back and had to physically retype
Several.
a lot of people's things, because at that point it was just easier than trying to get to, so please, that's a good point. I totally forgot. It's
So
like,
you're saying that Google Doc for the writing, but for the.
we don't care for the
permission
other one.
slip
I don't-
should be-
I don't care what you can save the
Yeah.
permission slip as a JPEG if you want to, because we keep those in-house.
And we don't have to do anything to that. Yeah,
But we do have to have the ones that go to the state as a Google Doc in the correct format with all the bold and all that correct. So when we have to alter that, even if we use something like Cami, which both of us are relatively tech savvy, it just doesn't work well when it comes from other schools and all of that.
like the formatting's all off, and we want to send our best foot forward. I mean, we don't want to send off
We
anything
won't.
that we're like, this won't go. And so we're both kind of type A a little bit. And so we'll do the work, but it'd be really helpful if you would help us with that and kind of let your people know that.
And speaking of helping, you should take note that judging is on the 9th. So if you are planning on submitting entries, we definitely want you to be at judging as well. We promise we won't make you judge your own students' work. And if you do plan on submitting art, I have a couple of art teachers that would turn in all 60, 90, they have 90 kids. They turn in all the submissions and say, yeah, you guys pick. So please don't do that to us. When we say there's no limit on art, just pick your best ones and send those to us. But
The ones that truly have a chance, because I would
Right.
say in this book, there's probably about 10 to 15 tops that make it in the book. So out of everybody in the state of North Carolina. So definitely please only send us the ones that really would have a shot of making it. Any other
Well, and
questions?
that's another reason too why, if they can trace over the edges of their pictures with a bold black, like a Sharpie or something like that, because if it's really faint or not easy to see, like colored pencil sometimes doesn't show up well in printing, the darker and bolder those colors are, the more likely they are to be picked traditionally.
Because it prints well in a book.
Yeah. Any other questions on there?
I don't see any other questions in the chat. Is that pretty good with young authors?
Somebody's in a waiting.
Oh, somebody just joined. Oh, she might have
The
gotten
only
kicked
other
out.
question that we sometimes get from upper level teachers, from middle and high school teachers, I know there's only one in here, but because we're recording this, I'll say it, is that the entries are per member. So you get 5 entries per member. You don't get 5 entries per class. So even if you have 3 English classes, you can't submit 5, or you can't submit 15 for 5 of each of your class. You can only submit 5 total. So sometimes that's an issue with reading. But if you get someone in your school, like your media coordinator, who isn't going to have submissions and say, will you submit my 5 or whatever, or your principal, we have principals that are members just for submission help.
Or your PE teachers, like we talked about, and they can use the CEUs as well. So
And I'll also put a plug in for principals that you should definitely get your principals on board with this, because we put this in the paper, it's publicized, and when those kids win, the school is publicized as well.
it makes the school look good.
It makes the school look good. So if it were me, I would go directly to my principal or principals and say, you guys should all be members so that we can have as many submissions as possible, because the more submissions we have, the more likely it is that we will win.
Yep.
But to be perfectly honest, at a high school level, if you submit something, you're gonna win.
Yeah.
Yes, we had 1 submission from high school last year, 1. And they made it to the state level. They made it and they won in the state level.
They did.
So I'm telling you, I don't know where everybody's from. I don't know who else on the chat, but I really want high school.
The older they get busy with other stuff. So if they try, they've got an excellent chance of making it, because we try to pull somebody from every level. So if there's one at 9th or 10th grade, they're definitely going to get it because of that. We don't want to have just a book full of 4th grade. You always get a lot of 4th graders, it seems like. And we want to have a good range of everybody from kindergarten right on up. And you guys as adults, as members, can also submit in the Forever Young category. So we love to get those as well, because that sometimes is some of the most meaningful pieces in the book, because what you guys have to say is really important too.
And those are not judged. Those go directly to the state.
Yes. Any other questions about YA?
We
They do get judged
there,
at the
but
state
we
level.
don't judge them. So you're not
Yes.
being judged by your.
Yeah, we are
peers.
not going to judge our colleagues in the county, because that's not
Fun.
fun to do.
But normally they're all great. I will say,
Yes.
normally I don't think I've ever read one that's not great, but yeah.
Anything
Okay,
else?
thanks, guys. Please email
Okay.
myself or Tiffany Mayo if you have a question and you didn't want to put it here, or if you talk to somebody, they have a question, we're happy to answer you. So thanks for coming.
Okay, thank y'all. Now I'm going to jump in and share. Let's see here. 1 second. Gotta pull my stuff up here. Okay. Can you guys see the Global Read Aloud presentation? Can I get a thumbs up if you can see that one? Perfect. Okay. And I'm going to pull my mask down just long enough to talk to you guys so you can hear me and I'm not muffled. I'm Emily Golightly, in case you weren't logged in when we introduced ourselves, and I am past president, and I do like all the social media and stuff. And I am really passionate about the Global Read Aloud, so I'm excited to talk to you guys about that today. That is a project that has been going on for many years now, and it was started by Pernille Rip, and she is a middle grades teacher in the Midwest, and we thought last year was actually going to be the last year for it, because she was frankly kind of starting to get burnt out. She's a published author and a full-time teacher and a parent and everything else. And this was just maybe that one too many thing on her plate, as I'm sure you can all understand with COVID life and how everybody's a little burnt out lately. But she decided to continue on, and I'm really thankful that she did, because the books this year are fantastic. And so this is a project that lasts 6 weeks, and for the elementary grades, it's one picture book a week. And for the early chapter books on up through high school, young adult, it's like a certain number of pages or chapters per week. And they tell you that reading breakdown, and I'm going to share those things in just a second. But so our start date will be October 4th, and it will run through November 12th of this school year. So here's a quick video from Pernille, and this is just introducing the concept of the Global ReadAloud.
Hi, I'm Pernille Rupp, and I founded the Global ReadAloud. The project was created in 2010 with a simple goal in mind: one book to connect the world. Now, with 3 years under our belt and more than 30,000 connections made, we realize we're onto something larger. The premise is simple. We pick a book to read aloud to our children during a set 6-week period, and during that time, we try to make as many global connections as possible, sharing the book and our thoughts. Each facilitator decides how much time they would like to dedicate and how involved they would like to be. Some people choose to connect with just one class, while others go for as many connections as possible. The scope and depth of the project is up to the individual. In the past, we've used Twitter, Skype, Edmodo, KidBlock, our wiki, email, and regular mail, and any other tools we can think of to make these connections. Teachers get a community of other educators to do a global project with, hopefully inspiring them to continue these connections throughout the year. And the children? They get an incredible way to find commonalities with the rest of the world, all through the shared love of a book.
Okay, so that, she explains it better than I ever could, obviously. The connections that are made are just really the most amazing part of this project. My kids have connected with other classes in India and Canada and around the United States, places that they've never seen or been or even heard of. And it's really neat to kind of have those Zoom or Google Meets or, Padlets, Flipgrids, however you choose to connect, because they really get to see how other kids do things around the world and kind of get a little picture into what their lives are like through sharing a story. And so that's a pretty incredible thing that we get to do. And as professionals, we're evaluated on, are we making global connections? Well, checkity check. That gets that box checked easily, and will have you in accomplished when you go to sit down with your administration for your teacher evaluation. So this is just a great way too to grow yourself professionally and build connections with other teachers. I know back when Hurricane Florence happened and, our school system was out for weeks and, kids had damage and lost homes and stuff. I had people from schools around the country that I connected with in previous years through the Global ReadAloud that sent money and books to my kids. And it was amazing. I'm getting goosebumps even just remembering it, because those are the kind of connections you make. It's not just a one-time thing. It can be lasting, and it really has an amazing impact. So this year, our picture books are from Duncan Tonatiuh, and he is an Indigenous author. And I can't see his picture because my little pictures are covering him up. So let me slide this up so I can see what I'm doing. So his books, he's got Dear Primo, Separate is Never Equal, which was about the desegregation of schools in California. He has a lot of fables and tall tales and traditional literature like Feathered Serpent and the Five Sons, Pancho Rabbit and the Coyote, things that you can tie into relevant events in the children's lives. Like if you have kids that are immigrants that have come from another country, Pancho Rabbit, they may really relate to that story. Diego Rivera, if they're artistic kids, they may really relate to some of these that are based on artists and things like that. The Dear Primo is one of my favorites because it's about how their lives are different, just like with the Global ReadAloud. It's such a great way to make connections because his cousin lives in Mexico, he lives in the United States, and even though they're family, the way their lives look day to day are very different. And so that's a great springboard for those conversations with your Global ReadAloud partners. Dragons in a Bag would be your early chapter book, and that is by Zetta Elliott. And this book is the first in a series, and they're for those beginning chapter book readers. So they're, not a lot of text on a page. They do have some visuals, but it's a good beginning chapter book. I've seen people use those beginning chapter books anywhere from first grade on up through fourth grade, depending on what the teacher wanted to do. And I've seen people use the picture books right on up through middle school. So you don't have to use a certain level with your students. You pick what's going to fit your classroom family the best. But this one's a really neat fantasy book because They're literally these tiny dragons in a bag, and he's got like, he goes into this alternate universe, and he didn't realize that his grandmother type figure in the story was actually a witch. And there's just, it's not the type of book that I would typically choose. I'm not generally a big fantasy reader, but the more that Pernille Ripp chooses these kinds of books, I'm getting more and more into it. So I would say I really enjoyed that one. I think your kids will too. This is the first time that I've seen the Global Read Aloud feature a scary book. And so this one, I would say read it before you choose to do it with your class. I probably wouldn't do it any younger than 4th personally. But I know my kids in the library. I'm a librarian just like the other 2 presenters that were just speaking, and they love the scary books generally. Kids like to be scared, and you know, it's falling right in October, which is kind of a good time for something like that. So, but I will say this one definitely has a lot of scary elements, and you know, scary monster kind of creatures and dark woods and that kind of thing. So I would just be aware, and I would definitely read it before you choose it for your kids. But I liked it. This one is one of my favorites, and I would say this would be a middle grades, maybe upper elementary, maybe 9th grade. I probably wouldn't think that any higher than 9th would be as interested in this one. They would probably prefer Aloud in high school, but this one I think does have a wide range of interest. And again, it's fantasy. There's these indigenous kids who are foster children, and they end up in the same foster family, and in the attic of this home is like a portal to another dimension. Basically, it's this alternate reality with animals that speak and walk and wear clothes and all this crazy stuff. And it's what they say at the top, Narnia meets traditional indigenous stories. I think that's the perfect description of that. I think that this one's a really cool story. My own kids enjoyed this story, and so I would definitely recommend this one. I think it's a great one and a lot of springboard for conversations about foster families or feeling like you don't belong, or you know, things like that. I think that this one has a lot of potential for those types of conversations. And then finally, for your young adult title, you have Alatsoe. And this is another indigenous author, Darcy Little Badger, who you see in the picture there. And this one is, again, another fantasy, a lot of fantasy this year. It's kind of like a not so distant future, dystopian America. And there's like vampires, and she can see ghosts and talk to the dead and all this crazy stuff. But it's kind of like a mystery too. And I don't want to give too much away because I really think you need to read it, even if you don't choose this one for your class, because it's really good. And it was my favorite of all of them. So I will say, even if you don't do this with your class, read Alatsoe. It's awesome. So if you want to participate in the Global Read Aloud, sign up is, you know, you can get plugged in through Facebook. You don't have to sign up on the website like you used to. Now you just, you know, go through the Facebook, join those groups. You can get plugged into Padlets and Flipgrids and all kinds of different technology. You can obviously need to get a copy of the book you're reading. I know some teachers like to have a copy for every student in the class because they want the child to follow along so they're engaged and not getting distracted or not, you know, participating in the lesson. But I will say, if you're comfortable, I think there's a lot of power in listening to the story, just being read to. I don't think we get that enough. Yes.
Can I say that for at least a lower level, 5 out of the 6 are on Epic as well?
Yes, that's true. So Ms. McCall just said that 5 of the 6 books for Duncan Tonatiuh are available on Epic for free. So definitely take advantage of that. And that's something too, where you may want the kids to listen while you're reading, but then if they want to go back and enjoy that story again in a station or listen to it at home or whatever, you've got access there without having to buy 50 bazillion copies of a book. That, especially with the picture books, you know, 1 a week, that would get very pricey for you. Don't read ahead. That's a really important rule for this, because if you're partnering with a class in Texas, for example, and you read 2 books ahead if you're a picture book, or you read 2 sections ahead if you're in one of the chapter books, and then your kids start spoiling things for their kids when you guys are on a Google Meet or on a Flipgrid, those kids are not going to be really happy about that. And that teacher's not going to be really happy about that. So it's fine to fall behind. People get busy and it's hard to stay caught up sometimes. That's okay, but don't get ahead because you don't want to ruin anything for anybody else. To sign up, I've linked that here. I will share this presentation in the chat once we're done. And I just noted down at the bottom again, the sign up is not on the website. It's all through Facebook now. There used to be a sign up on a Google form. They don't do that anymore. So you don't have to jump through too many hoops. She's trying to make it as easy as possible for everybody. one of the best ways to connect with both the authors and other teachers that are participating is to follow these hashtags and these authors on Twitter. And they're really good about traditionally engaging with people through Zoom sessions, things like that. So if you follow the social media pages, you'll see, okay, well, Duncan's going to do something on, this coming Thursday. Everybody tune in at this time and you can all participate. So he may not do individual Skype sessions or things like that. I wouldn't expect that from these authors because there's just too many classes participating. Literally millions of kids around the world are starting to participate on a yearly basis, but they're doing more of a large group thing where you can listen in to a session like that. So that's a really neat opportunity too. And as I mentioned before, Pernille Ripp, the creator of this project, you can follow her on Twitter as well. And she's good about responding if you have specific questions and things. These are the Facebook groups and they're linked in the presentation. So when you get that, you can click on any of these and it'll take you directly to that. I've also included this presentation on our Crystal Coast Reading Council webpage, so you can get all of this from there as well. Again, the social media is really the easiest way to connect with other teachers nowadays. So we've had spreadsheets in the past and other things, but this is going to be the easiest way to get plugged in. We've got some digital resources here, an editable parent letter. So this is a really good one because that way you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you want to share with your families what you're doing, you just make a copy, share it out, and you can tweak it to make it your own. More information on this website here, which takes you to the Global Read Aloud website, and you can also email her with specific questions. But I will say social media is a lot easier than trying to email her. You'll get a faster response. Let's see. There we go. I have a picture book Padlet that I've been creating for the last, 4 or 5 years at least. And that's a great way for the kids who are participating with the picture books because you're able to answer questions specifically about each book each week. There's a little intro part of the Padlet, and it's a good way to kind of engage, but it doesn't have to be in real time. So for people who are like, well, I can't do it at 11 o'clock on Thursdays, that's not good for me. Well, that's fine. You have your kids respond to this whenever is convenient for you. Or you can even, if you have littles like kindergarten or something like that, you could have them dictate to you, maybe even chart it, and you can post your picture of your chart right there on the Padlet. So this gives you lots of options. I've seen people post videos, photos, just written comments. It's really whatever works for you. So that's the nice thing about Padlet is there's a lot of flexibility. I've got a lot of other resources that I also shared on my website for my media center. So that takes you right there. And then there's just my resources, and I'm going to stop my share. Does anybody have any questions? Let me look at the chat and see. Okay. Let's see. Mary says, well done on the YA information. Jumbies is on Epic 2. Thank you, Amber, for letting me know that. That's awesome. Any other questions about Global Read Aloud or anything that y'all want to share or experiences you've had with it that are good for the group? Anything?
Okay. Let's see. I will say that I went. I don't know if they can hear me. As a media specialist, I tried really. I kind of put it out to my staff, and so I had some staff members who last year I collaborated with and went into their room, and we kind of we had like a weekly date, I guess you could say, where I went in with their kids, and that was kind of my deal with them. Like the teacher was like, do what you want with them. And they helped me. We collaborated, but we connected with people from across different places. Sometimes I even helped like them. If some of my teachers were maybe they didn't have Facebook or they weren't, really strong in technology and didn't feel comfortable connecting with people. So I helped with that. So I think that there's most likely somebody at your school or your media specialist, your tech person, who would be more than happy to, I would think, to help if you reach out. And if they don't, I might be shooting myself, but I'll help. so it's really just kind of ask until you find somebody. And so my point in saying that is that it's a great opportunity to collaborate like amongst your team and amongst the people at your school, because it's something that really can be extended way beyond the classroom as far as just in your building, I think.
Yes.